Hi there. My name is Ariel Ortiz. I come from Mexico, from Tecnológico de Monterrey. This is the first time I come to the Education Summit, so it's really awesome being here. I just want to talk about a little bit my experience using Python in competitive programming. Competitive programming refers to basically this kind of a sport in which students are able to program to solve problems. Specifically, my experience has been here in the ICPC for ICM, and ICPC stands for Intercollegiate Programming Contest. This is a photograph of me and my students. This is the World Finals in Eindhoven in the Netherlands in 1999. It's almost 20 years ago, so it seems to me I was a little bit younger at that time. Okay, just in case you're not sure that this is me here. Okay. So what is the ICPC? What are the rules for this programming competition? Basically, you have teams of students, 3 students per team. There's only one computer. Our students have 5 hours in order to solve from 8 to 15 problems, as many as they can. In my experience, sometimes students are unable to solve not even one, but usually they solve 1, 2, at least most of the time. Well, really depends on the level of the competition, but usually there are at least 1 or 2 problems that are typically fairly easy, so most teams actually get to solve them. So during many years, the only programming languages that you could use were C, C++, and Java. Fortunately, since the World Finals last year in 2017, we were able to allow our students to also use Python, and that was very, very good news because before that, we only were able to use these. Actually, a few years ago when we started, they allowed to use Pascal, but at some point they actually took it away. But now Python is there, and I just checked the rules, and they're allowing to now use Kotlin as well. It seems to become a very popular language since recently Google, well, more or less a year ago, Google announced that Android was, you were going to be able to program Android applications using Kotlin, okay? So the general program flow when you're in these programming competitions is very simple. It looks just like a standard Unix filter. You have a program, it reads all the input from the standard input, and you generate the output in the standard output. And in general, this is very easy, but the problems are usually not that simple in the sense that the algorithms have to be fairly sophisticated. But in its general form, this is how they work. Sometimes a little bit of difficulty stems on the students actually knowing how to read from the standard input. But in practice, the programs are actually tested through redirection. So even though we say we read from standard and standard, usually we're using files that are redirected to these input and output streams. So the interesting part here, and what you might actually find useful, at least most of you, is that there are several online judges that you can test your programming skills with. So even if you don't plan to use it in competitive programming, because I know that some students actually get a little bit stressed out when they work in this very competitive environment. But if you find, if you like the puzzles, if you like programming puzzles, these online judges are pretty cool because they allow you to see a problem description, and you can take as long as you want to actually solve these problems in its more general form. So just in case any of you are interested, these are the ones that I've found in the past most useful. There's the Sphere Online Judge. This is a Polish site, and it works pretty well. There's this other site, the Caribbean Online Judge, which is a Cuban site, and there's this other site, Omega Up. This one is pretty cool because it's very easy to add your own problems, so you can actually use this site if you want to do your own programming competitions locally for your own students, if you find that useful, okay? So One of the main advantages that I see here is that using these sites and in general this spirit of competitive programming is that students that really like challenges and they work well under pressure and they pretty well do some really awesome work. But even if as I mentioned before, if you don't really want to have your students go under the stress, you can always use these judges even for standard homeworks, programming assignments. There's some really nice problems that you can use there. One of the main disadvantages that I see this is that these programming contests are really much focused on solving the problem fast, and they don't give you any extra points if you do it in a neat way, in a clear way, using a documentation or elegant algorithms or whatever. Usually it's just a matter of if it works, it's fine. If it doesn't work, your program is going to be rejected. So I think you have to be careful with that, because otherwise students might actually start trying to have this emphasis on doing things fast without doing them necessarily well. Okay, but I mean, you can take it as a way that they can actually practice their problem solving and algorithm design skills. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to me. This link, you can find this presentation if you want to have a closer look to the links. Okay, and thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Hello, my name is Ane, and today I'm going to talk about how I became a teaching assistant playing Mad Libs. So, first off, how many people know what Mad Libs is here? Okay, I thought like very few people would know anyways. A little bit about myself. So I've been just learning to code since 5th grade, and since now I'm finishing up 6th grade, so it's just been about a year. So I use the PyCon curriculum for this, and I'll show you what it is. So this is the PyCon curriculum. It was started by my mom about 3 years ago when she began to get involved with the education summit in Python. So I'm just gonna scroll down. You can see a little bit about it. So yeah, this is the PyCon curriculum. So from the PyCon curriculum, we've learned many things, and by we, meaning I and my friends. So far, we have coded a simple calculator, played with strings, created a report card with if and else statements, and made a chessboard with 4 loops. So recently, I think around fall, I got a challenge to create a fun activity that I could contribute to the class, and which was a Mad Libs. I love playing Mad Libs with my brother, and I started thinking of creating Mad Libs with Python. Using basic concepts of variables and statements that I've learned so far, here's what I created. Before I go to the Mad Libs page, I had a lot of laughs with my friends. When they ran this game, we got some very funny Mad Libs. So let's try. So as you can see, this is my Mad Libs. It was made on the Jupyter Notebook. So I'm gonna need the audience's help for this one. And I'm gonna call out like different part of speeches, and whoever raised their hand or shout out like an adjective in this case, or whichever part of speech comes up, I'll just type it in and we'll see what we get. All right, so can someone give me an adjective? Okay, I'm just gonna write funny. Can someone suggest a noun, please? Can someone please say a verb in past tense? Can someone please type in an adverb? Can someone please type in say an adjective? Can someone please say a noun? Can someone please say a noun again? Can someone please say another adjective? Okay, I need a verb. I need another adverb. No, okay. Thank God I got prepared. Can someone please tell me a past tense verb? Can someone please say an adjective? I think this is the last one. Okay, so the Mad Libs has generated. For those of you who cannot see, I'll read it out to you. Today, I went to the zoo. I saw a funny Carol jumping up and down in his tree. She ran quickly through a large tunnel that led to its heavy dog. I got some peanuts and passed them through the cage to a gigantic gray Nicholas towering above my head. Feeding that animal made me hungry. I went to get a heavy scoop of ice cream. It filled my stomach. Afterwards, I had to slither crazily to catch the bus. When I got home, I swam my mom about the slimy day at the zoo. So that was my Mad Libs, and I'm gonna go back to the presentation. Fortunately, my Mad Libs game made it to the PyCon curriculum. And this is when I became a TA around January 2018. I've been helping my friends and other children from the Olive Children Foundation in the Bay Area to create their own Mad Libs and also learn Python. The fun part is that even on the job, I still continue to learn more Python. By the way, I also set up the projector and I calmed the kids down. My salary was a $10 Starbucks gift card from the Olive Children. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you for listening.
All right, I'll restart. Okay, so I'm a bit nervous about giving this talk, which that did not help with. The first reason is I thought of it an hour ago, and lots of people have clearly given much better thought out talks than this will be. And two is I don't know how it will be received, but I guess I'll find out. So I wanted to talk about adult education in Python. And I noticed there are a lot of smart people here who are passionate about education, and I noticed a lot of it is centered on K through 12. And there's fundamentally a different set of challenges in adult education. And I think if I can convince one person that thinking about those challenges is useful, then I'll fulfill my selfish motivation of having better online adult education for myself. So the primary difference with adult education, as I see it, is there's a big subset of people that are actually trying to escape a box that's been put around them. And that box can be a dead-end job, That box can be not having freedom. That box can be not being able to kind of hit your idealized version of yourself. And in order to kind of commit to learning as an adult for 10 to 20 hours a week, when you might have kids, when you might have other responsibilities, it takes a huge commitment, right? So you need to really see the value in adult education very, very quickly. So for me personally, my box was being stuck working in factories and other kind of bureaucratic jobs that I really did not like. And Python, in a very real sense, was freedom, right? So I, and a lot of the people I've taught over the years, have kind of this idealized version of themselves. And they see programming as getting them to that idealized version of themselves, but they don't always understand how it will get them there. And learning, adult learning, is really a way to make that process more efficient, right? If you lock a smart person in a room, they can theoretically figure out programming on their own, right? If you lock them in with some books, they can figure out a little bit better. If you give them online education or a boot camp, maybe they can figure out even better. So it's really about not wasting time and being able to see clear, concrete progress towards your goals and being more efficient with what you're learning. The unfortunate part, and I think the two big challenges that remain to be solved, are what causes people to drop off, right? So people stop learning when they no longer see how they can get to that idealized vision of themselves, right? How they can break out of this box, how they can avoid that dead-end job they're stuck in, et cetera. And one thing that causes that is when they no longer see the value of the resource they're using. It no longer helps them make their progress towards their idealized self. The other way that this happens is some people, programming is a completely new mental model, right? It's a completely different way of thinking, particularly if you're an adult coming to it. And that can be very, very hard to kind of get your head around. And particularly if you have the wrong resource, you can be convinced that you can't learn it, when in fact you can. You're just learning it the wrong way. The second big class of challenges is around people who don't even kind of see that idealized vision of themselves. So there's a lot of people out there who have figured out that they have an idealized vision of themselves, and learning Python and programming is the way to get there. But there's a lot more people who have a fuzzy vision of their idealized self, and they don't really understand that programming is the way to get there in the first place, right? So how do you reach people who would want to learn programming, but don't know that they want to learn programming? It's a really interesting and big challenge that I personally don't have any answers to, but hopefully someone here will. The other one is people that believe that they can't do it. So as kids, maybe they were told by a teacher that they couldn't learn, or they ran into a roadblock and never managed to cross it, and now they're convinced they can never program or learn math, et cetera. And that causes a lot of people to also never try, unfortunately, right? So those are kind of the two big classes of challenge. How do you reach people who aren't, who have kind of an idealized vision and a path to get there, but they don't believe that their path is going to work? And then people who don't even have the path. And that's my talk.
So I'll start out with Economic Development Corporation. If you aren't familiar with that, if you may have one in your community, it's an entity that's usually created at the state level and also local levels to promote the economy of the local place. So recruit businesses, bring in retail, bring in new restaurants, all that kind of stuff. And the motivation for that is sales revenue, get more tax, the tax goes to the city, and then some of that funding is used. So my name is Joel Garza, and while I don't claim to be a Python developer, I am a staunch Python advocate. My claim to fame among those who have been regularly attending PyCon is I purchased 100 raffle tickets for the PyLadies auction about 3 years ago, and I won over half the prizes, which kind of like changed the dynamic. On the one hand, I'm a supporter, on the other hand, I'm like hoarding all the prizes, which I ended up giving up most of them away. I did volunteer early on, met the wonderful PyCon staff, saw Jesse Knoller's keynote, and fell in love with the community. And I've tried to be a part of it as much as I can ever since. Life's been a little bit of a winding path since 2012. And so while I have not achieved a role as a Python developer, I continue to promote Python and Python-based tools whenever it fits the occasion. So back to economic development, I now serve as the Director of Technology for the Mission Economic Development Corporation. We're in Mission, Texas, which is in the South Texas, Rio Grande Valley. We have a population of about 85,000 people, and we also have a 501c3 called the Mission Economic Development Council that we use for some of our programs. So
our director had the vision to kind of expand beyond the traditional EDC role. We promote STEAM education, both adult and K through 12 in our community, to build the skills that are needed for higher paying jobs with an emphasis on technology, computational thinking, and programming. And we do this through some homegrown programs such as Code the Town, Web of Women, and Career Readiness and Empowerment of Women, called CREW. We also hire people, we license curriculum, we form partnerships with other organizations like CompTIA and Code Interactive, and we also support legislation like House Bill 728, where computer science will now count as an advanced math or science credit towards graduation in high schools for Texas. So the idea there is if we can build up the skills of the people, one, they'll have a better trajectory for the jobs that they could be eligible for and to get. And also, hopefully, that as the years progress, that we will build enough of that skill in the area to recruit businesses, because we have very few tech businesses. It's a heavy manufacturing and service-oriented area. So we're determined to continue to move forward. Last year, we converted an old Kmart into our Center for Education and Economic Development as a place to have a co-working space, offices, and classrooms for all of this to be held. So what I'm wanted to do, having attended the Education Summit before and seeing the wonderful thing, we had some great talks today about community, is to seek advice, wisdom, help, partners, mentors, just anything that, if anyone feels very strongly about one of their projects that you'd like to see implemented in another area. We have the space, we have our own funds, we can apply for grants. Just in the last year, we've received over $500,000 in grants for programs for adult education and retraining. And so that's what I want, and so what I wanted to offer to you is in your community, if you're looking for supporters amongst other businesses and things that can sponsor you, is see if your local EDC is kind of in the mode to be able to look at supporting some other things, because they do have money to invest in the community. They'll sponsor tables for the hospital and things like that, but see if they can help support you in that way. And there's, depending on your state, there's grants that when matched by EDC money, you can get matching funds to be able to help support these programs. So if you have any ideas, you'd like to speak with me, look for me around the conference. I'll be here until Tuesday. If you have any questions about economic development, I only know as much as I know from the last year from within the state of Texas, but it's certainly something that you should look to try to leverage if you can. Thank you.
Or is there HDMI? Can you hear me? Oh, now you can. So this is my first time to PyCon. Thank you. And I'm a new Python user, so I'm learning Python myself and loving it, and I'm excited to continue learning here at the event. My background is I'm a co-founder and board member of a makerspace nonprofit, and so our whole mission is to increase STEM education. And so I teach a lot of our classes, like on 3D printing, laser cutting, woodworking, welding, and yet we're starting to get more into like robotics and stuff. And so learning code is, for me, something I want to do so that I can make things move and use sensors and actuators and more of the physical things. But in learning Python, I was told as a young person that I had a reading disability. And so one of the most frustrating things about learning Python is you'll go out and you'll get a book and it's like this thick. And if you're supposed to just read page after page, it's hard enough if you have a reading disability just to read English. And then you throw in all the syntax and the jargon, and it's like you're having to basically climb this insurmountably high mountain. And so I can definitely relate to the young man that was up here 2 talks ago about just the intimidation factor. And I think I've given up 3 or 4 times and had to get back on the trail and try to hike a little bit further each time, and then I give up and then I get back. And I just never feel like I get much accomplishment because that format just doesn't work for me. I'm more of an experiential learner. And so I decided I think I need to design a new way to learn so that people like me can learn the way I need to learn. And so what I thought of was a card game. I was playing a lot of Cards Against Humanity and those types of card games, apples to apples. And so I was thinking, how would you teach Python as a card game? So there's no computers involved, you're completely offline, and the focus would be reading code, not writing code, because I think a lot of the time you try to get people writing code as quickly as possible, and I feel like reading code is more important because you want to read really good code before you start writing your own. We teach every kid in America and hopefully all around the world how to read. We don't expect them all to be published authors. We don't expect them to be Shakespeare. But if they can read Shakespeare, we expect them to have a better life. And I think everyone should learn to read code. Not everyone necessarily needs to become a programmer. And so this card game, hopefully, if it materializes, will help teach more and more people to read code. And so the way I went about it was I started looking at all of the cheat sheets. This one I found to be helpful because it broke things down into different kind of bite-sized categories. Kudict, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but on GitHub has this all of Python 3 in one page, and you can print this out as a poster, which we have up in our makerspace now. And it kind of breaks out all of these fundamental components of the Python language into different, kind of a mind map. I found this Python introduction in a notebook, and I went through, and it had really nice categories of introducing the Python language. This is blurry, sorry about that, but Learn X in Y Minutes is a nice website I found, and the Python tutorial in there I felt like was very concise and easy to follow. But ultimately, can you recognize what a variable is? Can you recognize what a function is? Because I feel like recognition precedes comprehension. So until you can identify what these objects are, and I read early on, everything in Python is an object. Until you can identify what objects are functions and what objects are variables and methods and all of the different terms, then you're really not able to navigate through reading other people's code very well. So I started taking programs and cutting them into small segments, little snippets of code, and I pasted them onto cardstock, which I printed on a color printer, which I had identified with different point values based on the difficulty I felt like of that segment of code. And ironically, I realized halfway through I was cutting and pasting code physically, which was pretty fun. Did you have a clipboard? I did not have a clipboard, no. But I did this for 7 complete programs until I had a full deck of cards. And these made up the code cards. And so that's one segment of the game. And each one is worth a specific amount of points if you can correctly answer the quiz on the code card. The first player to complete an entire program from start to finish indicates the end of the game. Then everyone adds up their points, and that's how you know who won the game. And it's just like I was saying, can you identify a variable or can you identify the function? So examples, questions here might be like, what object applies to the text for body in snake located on line 50? And so you have to read through there, you look at line 50, and then there's an object card that corresponds to that question. And if you play the correct object card, you get 4 points. These are the object cards. Broke them down into operators like add, subtract, multiply, divide, variables, groups, which I'm not completely married to that concept, but it's basically like classes, dictionaries, lists, groups of data, error cards. There are going to be some error cards thrown in there, and if you can't identify the error, then you lose like all your points, or it makes you start all over again like an error will. Comment cards, function cards, logic cards, data type cards. And I kind of bunched a lot of stuff in the logic, like if, then, for loops, while loops, all those kind of like conditional things are on the logic card. But players basically, on their turns, try to play the right object card to the corresponding code card. And when they get them right, they get to keep them and they get the points. And when they play them wrong, they lose their object card, which is frustrating because then the next time you know something comes around, you don't have the object card to draw from because you've lost it. So part of it is throughout the whole game, you're trying to collect all of the object cards and understand when to use them correctly. The other thing I really like about this game format is when it's not your turn, you're still learning, because you're watching the other players reinforce the concepts that you're learning through the game, so that within 30 minutes or an hour, you're going to get like 60 or 70 different opportunities to reinforce understanding these concepts. And finally, you can't have a game if you don't have wild cards. And so I threw in these entropy cards, which are going to basically shuffle the deck. And so some of them are like you trade 2 object cards to the player to the right, or steal all of the function cards from all the players. And so everyone basically has been waiting to play that function card, and then you play this and they lose their function cards and have to start all over trying to collect them again. But this game is really early in development still. It's just a concept. My idea is hopefully I could meet some people here at the conference who actually know the language well better than I do, because I'm just getting started. I need game players for feedback and beta testing, some video editors for a Kickstarter campaign, which I hope to do sometime maybe in the next year or so. Technical writers, if you're interested in writing documentation for the game, and if anyone's got some money they want to put toward this, I think it's a valuable effort. And I'm not sure if it's going to be a for-profit venture or just open source or whatever, but I'd love to talk to anybody that's interested. Thank you.